All right. Well, good morning, everyone. And people who are running in from the future. This is the last of four-part training that I'm going to be doing here to fulfill my icon obligations. If you had had a chance, just a kind of quick summary of what we've covered so far. Again, if you go back to January, February, I talked about my lasso strategy, which was essentially how you can create a attraction-based business from your real estate with your real estate business, which covers things like land, air, sea, strategic operatives, and how it is that you can essentially combine all of those things so you have kind of this overarching uh message out into the community that's going to attract people to reaching out to you directly. Again, I built that business ultimately from how my first 2 years in the business, where I was essentially doing phone prospecting for 2 years, which I realized real quickly was a hamster wheel where you got to constantly be churning out those phone calls in order to get active clients that'll hurt you 90 days down the road. And it got to the point where I was working 50, 60 hours a week. And it was just one of those things. I didn't want to live my entire life that way. And it started building that attraction based business. And a lot of that came from having worked with Krista Mayshore and hired her as a coach. I'm going to talk about that today as well when I get into the main meat and potatoes of what we're covering. Uh, the next call I went over was how having a morning routine is important to actually executing on a business. And I'm going to talk about that again today as well, because when you are having expenses, when you are putting money into things, that doesn't mean that you can just stop them, right? You actually still have to work those systems. You have to call those leads. You have to make sure that the people that you are hiring to do the work are actually doing the work. All of those things require that you're actually going to have a routine in place to monitor this momentum as you build that business. Then I went over how to handle that initial phone call, that initial 10 to 12-minute phone call, setting expectations, setting the appointment, getting people to see you as the professional, and ultimately moving them through that pipeline. Then how to go through setting proper expectations and boundaries with clients as you're explaining things to them so that you're actually playing your game. You're not playing catch up as you're going throughout the transaction. These last 4 weeks, first round, I actually talked about just summarizing everything I just talked about there. The second week, I was talking about gamifying your real estate business, how you can make this a challenging game for you so that you're actually able to have a consistent routine in place that are actually moving things forward and managing that momentum. Last week, I was out on Ragbri, which is a bike across Iowa, and I talked about my lifestyle by design strategy, about how it is that I set up things so that I'm actually doing the things that I enjoy. And I'm including that in my real estate business, how that creates authenticity, how people notice you doing things, how you walking your dogs around. People who have pets, they love their pets. I have two dogs and two cats. My other little guys kind of running around, but these guys are always a part of my branding and my videos. And people like seeing those things as it humanizes you. There's a lot of real estate agents that if you meet them, they're always kind of dressed to the nines and there's a little pretentiousness about it. And I think when people start to see you doing the things that you enjoy, hiking, going on travels, people are more likely to actually want to work with you because they feel like they have something in common with you. And if you really master that lasso strategy, um, people come to understand that you need to have that time of yourself. And if you do it right, I mean, it's not uncommon for me to only work 15, 20 hours a week. It's a very real thing. Of course, there are some days where I'm working a little bit more. And today I'm going to be talking about why you need to actually have expenses as a real estate professional to actually have a business. You know, we all have expenses in this business. My real estate coach, Krista Mayshore, she oftentimes uses an analogy about a coffee shop, which is a lot of real estate agents get into this business and they get their license and they think that their phone's just going to start ringing and people are going to want to work with them, right? If you are going to be running a business, that means you are going to have expenses. That means you are going to be spending money on systems. You are going to have to spend money on training. You're going to have to pay for kind of the basics, you know, the for sale signs, the open house signs, all the basic, the dues that you have as a real estate professional. But if you actually want to work for yourself, and I'm a solo real estate agent. I ran a team for about 3 years. I run my own show. I don't have a team of agents underneath me. I do have a licensed assistant who I talk to every single day, and she runs things on the back end for me. but I no longer run a team. I'm going to talk about kind of my story and entrance into real estate today to explain how my budget and my expenses have really progressed, what has changed, what hasn't. Times where I was heavy on expenses and then I went into more of a lean approach. A lot of that happened when I switched over to EXP. My budget actually dropped to about 35% of what it was within about 3-4 months of me actually joining EXP, and I'll talk about that as well. But there are all these different expenses that we have as real estate professionals and in building a business. Especially in that last whole strategy, we talk about branding, we talk about marketing, dues, signs. I see hiring real estate coaches as being a business expense, but I see it as a valid expense, especially in the industry where if you're at a brokerage and you're sitting in a room of 20, 30 other real estate agents all learning the exact same thing, nothing is going to differentiate you from the agent next to you. So why should a consumer choose to hire you as their real estate professional if you're learning the exact same thing as every other agent in your brokerage in your territory? I just don't think that's a good, solid strategy. So when I actually got into the business, I actually joined one of the top teams in the area, and I learned from them what they were doing on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, my business has progressed over the course of the last 7 years. Somewhere along the way, I actually added a year into my business. I've actually only been licensed for 8 years and 8 months, so I'm actually still pretty newer than what I thought. But I still built a business this way. I tell people it's either money or time. And in the beginning, I don't necessarily think having a split with a mentor or a team is a bad idea, so long as that team or mentor is actually teaching you things and doing things for you. The strategy that my first broker explained many teams have is they have kind of the big fish and they got all the little fish around them that are kind of picking up all the deals they can, and the big fish gets all the big deals. My initial first team was not like that. My actual broker was actually out of production, but he spent money on office space. He spent money on leads. He did training. He explained all those things to us. And then we as the agents were the ones picking up all the fish, right? So not just the big ones, right? And being on that initial first team was great for me because it taught me the routines. It taught me the conversations. It taught me what it is I need to be aware of as a real estate agent. I got to learn from all these other agents that were on that team as well. So I believe that being on a 50-50 split was okay in the beginning. And that is an expense. That is the tuition that you pay in order to learn how to run a business. We were a team that did things different. We had systems, marketing, branding, office space, routine trading. We had all of it, right? After about 2 years, or well, it was about more like 20 months, that real estate broker, he made enough money where he decided that he wanted to check out, and he decided to go and travel the country in his RE, right? And what I decided to do after that was, well, first off, when he disbanded, I had about 10 different brokers who were reaching out to me to come join their brokerage. I tell people who are getting licensed, like, they don't think it's a big, hurrah that you got hired by a real estate brokerage. Most any real estate brokerage will take any agent that can flog a mirror. When I first got in the business, I wanted to join a team, or not a team. I did look at joining another team before I actually decided to go independent. But what I ultimately decided after meeting with only 2 of those brokers was that it was actually going to be better for me to go 100% commission and work for myself. And I was going to treat myself as a 50-50 agent. That meant that if I got a $10,000 commission check, I was going to take $5,000 of that $10,000 commission check, and I was going to throw that back into the business. So I taught myself to treat myself as a 50-50 agent, right? So things that I was hiring systems into would be like CRM systems. I'm a big believer in Commissions Inc. I have dabbled into a few other CRM programs over the years, and I've always come back to Sync. I've been a member of them for 7 years now at this point, off and on. And I used that for a long time. I had paid for office space. When I budgeted out those first early years as a solo agent as a 100% commission, every dollar that I collected as a real estate agent, 50 cents went right back into the business, right? CRMs, office space. That's when I first started hiring real estate coaches too. Prior to real estate, I was actually in auto sales. I did really well in auto sales. And I realized that if you're going to be at a larger brokerage or a larger dealership, that there's a lot of jealousy at play there. And when you're joining those larger ones, there's going to be agents that are going to try to tear you down, and they're going to try to keep you kind of boxed into the way that they do business. And that wasn't something that I was interested in doing. having come from that first brokerage, we did things differently. We had conversations differently. And I didn't feel like joining a larger real estate brokerage. A lot of these big blockbuster brokerages, they just want you to kind of fit into their box and do the things their way. And I just didn't see the value in that. I didn't see the value in going and being 80-20 split with someone and they got 20% of my commission for essentially holding my license. So I decided to join a 100% commission brokerage where I paid a monthly desk fee. So that monthly desk fee initially was $1,400 a month. Over the course of time, it ultimately changes. I started working from home. Later on, I decided to open up a team. I decided to expand that back in 2023. But in those early years, I decided that I was going to hire my own coaches. I was going to hire my own training, right? I wasn't going to go to someone in my city who ultimately I felt like was doing things kind of an old school way. I decided to go online. I did my research. I found Krista Mayshore coaching. And over the course of the next 5 years, I spent a liberal arts tuition amount of money on my personal education. And I did what they told me to do. And that's one of these critical things I'm going to talk about with having expenses as a real estate agent is you actually need to work the systems that you're paying for. A lot of people will get these systems and they think that it's now done for me. I did the thing. I paid the money. Now I can just kind of step back and it's just going to work, right? That's not how these things work. When I hired Krista Mayshore, I knew that I had to record 2 videos a week. So I made sure that I did that work, right? I did the things on client avatars. I did the things on about pages. I knew what my budget was going to be. I knew what those things were that I needed to prepare for. I had a plan and I had a system. I didn't just pay tens of thousands of dollars to sit back and be like, okay, I did it. I paid for training. Now I'm good. I actually did the work behind it. Implementation is key. So for about 5 years after I became 100%, I kept paying into that tuition. I still hire coaches today, but really not at the same level and degree as what I did initially. Being with eXp Realty, you really have access to just like so much information, so much training that I felt that like I was essentially saving like $1,000 and $1,500 a month. And that first year after joining eXp, I made a promise to myself I wasn't hiring any coaches. I don't think my business actually suffered because I had access to all these different coaching programs. But I always treated myself as a 50-50 split, at least for those first 2 years. Later on, after I started becoming a top 10 agent in my city, I actually decided to run a team. And I did that for about 3 years. At that point, I was putting about 30% of my income back into the business. So if I had made $30,000 in a month, I would turn around and I would put $9,000 into the business, ultimately between lead generation, office space, coaching still. I was still doing coaching even back then. And I enjoyed mentoring agents, even though I was only really licensed, 5 years at that point. I had learned a lot because I had spent so much money into my coaching. I really very immersed in those things. I actually pulled down all my notebooks from the last 10 years of all the education I had. And I'm talking like notebooks that are I can't even fit in my screen right now. Like it's that high of information and things that I had done as a real estate agent and learned. And I did enjoy that. I enjoyed teaching. I still enjoy teaching. I trained those agents. I paid for their expenses. I paid for their office space, their training leads. By the time that it got to the beginning of 2023, my monthly expenses were about $12,000 a month. So I was actually at a certain point around 35-40% again. When I ultimately disbanded that team, I actually made the switch over to eXp. I ultimately disbanded the team because the agents, I call it having a sophomore agent effect, right? Like you have a good year, you have a good 2 years when you're listening to me as a professional on how to do things. Then you start to notice you're making more money than all your friends and your family. And you think, I don't need to actually do all these things. And they didn't have expenses. I paid their expenses, right? I was paying their expenses. They were on a split. That was an expense, I suppose, right? But ultimately, like I paid for all of those things and they didn't really appreciate what I was putting forward anymore. One thing that Jesse Zagorski said to me that really stuck with me about a year and a half before I even switched to eXp was running a team's like herding cats, right? Like they have their own perspective on how they're going to do things. You feed them, you give them leads, you shelter them, you give them office space, you love them, you train them. You give them all these things and then, they still end up resenting you for it, right? So it got to the point where I ultimately decided that it was no longer working for me. And that was the point where I started to, cut costs, right? I joined EXP. I got rid of my office space. That was a $2,700 expense every single month. I cut my lead generation to about half of what it was. I no longer needed to pay for coaching. I went from spending $12,000 a month to roughly $3,600 a month within 3 to 4 months of switching over to EXP because I didn't have to pay for all these other things anymore. And I didn't feel like I was at a big blockbuster brokerage where I was learning the exact same thing as every other agent in my territory because we're all over the world here. And that's one of the things and I love the traveling, it was a big thing for me. So it actually ended up saving me money, right? But when I'm talking about building a business, right, I incur building a budget for your business. Because if you don't actually have a budget, you don't have a business. You're not actually spending things on behalf of your clients. I believe that every time I take a listing, I can go out there. I'll probably spend $1,500 every time I take a listing, and that's not just including signs and open house signs, but photos, videos, which a lot of people do photos. I do videos. I will actually advertise that video out there. I will get 100,000 people to see that property inside of a week. I'll get over 100 hours of video watch time on that video. Like I'm actually doing something to market my clients' houses actively. Right? I'm not just sitting back and waiting for things to happen. Over the course of my career, going from being 50-50 to ultimately hiring my own CRMs, to hiring coaches, I decided what I was going to spend on those things, and I made sure that I actually implemented those things. Everyone's going to have their fixed costs. That's going to be, if you have an office space, that's a fixed cost. If you have everyone's going to have dues, things like that. Those are things you're going to have, right? And then you have your obligations. And that when I put that in, I say your obligations are also tied to the things that you're investing. If you're going to invest in the Commissions Inc. like I do, which today I spend about $2,000 a month on Commissions Inc., you better be working that system, right? Or you better hire someone to work that system, and you better be making sure that they're actually doing their job, right? You have to get in the habit of being comfortable with actually getting to the point where you might actually have to fire someone from time to time, right? If it's not working out, it's not working out. Or if you think it can do something better in another way, right? Opportunity costs. Some things like what I spend on, which would be like the coasters. I don't run an ad thinking, oh, I want to get leads from this ad. That's not what it's about. I call that a loss leader, right? I'm putting those things out there. It's costing me money to put those things out there. Is that ad specifically getting me a client? Maybe not. Probably not, right? But if that client has seen my videos going back 6 years, now that is something they're like, I constantly see you. You're front of mind. That's when you start hearing people like, I don't even see other real estate agents because all I see is your stuff everywhere. And their best friend might be a real estate. Their very best friend might be a real estate agent. But who's showing up on their Facebook and Instagram feeds more? Actually doing business, right? I call those loss leaders. I had one of my best friends. He was a general manager of 2 slumberlands down in Iowa City. And he had a thing where his employers, the bosses, the people who owned it, said, you're losing money on pillows. You're giving away pillows. You're selling them at discounts. He's like, yeah, I'm giving those things away, but look at how much I'm selling in sofas and tables and chairs and all these other things. He's like, this is a loss leader, right? You are going to use money on certain things. Think about the way Costco has a $1.50 hot dog. Do you think it's profitable for them to sell a $1.50 hot dog? No, it's not. But it's going to get you inside their store, and you're going to spend hundreds of dollars in that store coming in for sliced pizza and some hot dogs, right? So those are loss leaders. You have to be comfortable spending things so that you're going to get it. Do I get money from every single coaster that I put out there? Probably not, right? But these things, if I have a client that's out there in the market and they see these things, they're going to register, hey, that's Alex, that's my realtor. The bartenders, servers, it keeps you front of mind, right? Same things if you're someone who wants to spend money on billboards. Not something that I've decided to invest in. I didn't find it to be something that I really wanted to go into that avenue because I felt like I could get more from video ads and I can from $2,000 in video ads and I can $5,000 in monthly expenses on billboards. But when you are spending money on these systems like these CRMs, the lead gen systems, you actually have to work the system. Same thing with coaching programs. If you're going to hire a coach, you better do the things that it is that you say you're going to do with those coaches. You actually have to implement them, right? Things that, I spend money on nowadays is going to be the Sync CRM. That's $2,000 a month. Ads Manager, which is Facebook. I will usually spend anywhere between 1,500, which I think is 1,500 is kind of my sweet spot with Facebook, and $2,000 a month, right? So I'm telling you, that's $4,000 right there. I also this year decided to experiment with my budget and put $1,500 a month into postcard campaigns and actually doing farming in specific territories. When I decided to do that, I said, I'm going to do that for 18 months and then I'm going to assess. I didn't get into it and say, I'm going to mail out 1,500 postcards and then if it doesn't work, I'm going to cut it out, right? These are things that I'm investing in. I'm putting money into those systems and then we track the ROI. But part of the way that I built my business with that lasso strategy is it's not just one thing, it's all of the things, right? People who go out there and they see my coaster, they see my car, they see me out in the marketplace, they see my laptop with my branding on it, they see me walking their neighborhood with my dogs, they get a postcard in the mail, working with my top 100 clients, right? Like always knowing who those people are. Their friends are talking about me. So when they see all of these things, right? That's when they start working, they decide to work with you. So there are loss leaders, right? You're not going to make money on all of those things, right? So, but you still need to know what your budget is. If you're making $40,000 a month, $12,000 is a month is about what you want to spend on those things, right? You guys still got to have your savings. You got to set up money aside for taxes. There's a lot of other things that you have to pay for. Other expenses that I believe in are going to be editors and designers. I'm not someone who has a good eye for design, right? I don't want to be sitting in front of my computer doing a bunch of editing. I don't want to go out and take photos of properties. I don't want to take videos of properties. I want to hire someone specifically for that. I'm also not someone who enjoys doing paperwork. It's just not something that I find is a good use of my time, and I don't like it. When I joined EXP, I actually went on a 6-week road trip with my dogs. Like literally left the day I switched, right? Because I knew it was going to take some time to kind of get everything put together, and I wanted to go out on a road trip. And I did that, and I had listings come up during that time, and I wasn't present. So what I decided to do is reach out to someone like, hey, who's a good transaction coordinator or assistant who can run things for me back home? And that actually is the best hire I think I've ever made in my career. I hire I call her an assistant. She's not a TC because she's a licensed real estate agent. She's been licensed for 20 years. And when I call her up, I can actually have conversations with her about how we're going to be running that business. I pay her roughly an average about $500 per transaction, right? And I typically, my common commission in my territory, what I'm going to take home is usually about 11 grand per sale. So I just pay that out of that right away. I know what those expenses are and I pay for those things because I know it's going to be a better strategy for me overall to have those people who are actually going to handle those things for me. Other things, systems. I'm a big believer in Carrot. I like having a customizable website. I'm a big believer in making sure that my about page is looking better for people when they come in. If people are looking at my about page and another agent's about page, I want mine to stand out. I want them to see my awards. I want them to see my credentials. I want them to see my reviews. I want them to see me as a human being who loves his animals, who travels, who does all of these things, right? I want them to connect with me versus what other agents, if you ever look at some agents' about pages, it's very generic, right? I'm currently in competition for best real estate agent in the city of Rochester. I've been nominated 5 times, won twice. And I look at the descriptions that the other contestants are putting out there, and it looks like ChatGPT wrote it, right? They have things out there that's like, oh, we put the real in real estate. Okay. Right. Now, what does that mean? Or we treat our clients like friends and our staff or our team like family. Like when you look at mine, it talks about my core values. It talks about what the clients are looking for. It talks about the active market, what's actually happening in today's 2025 market with limited inventory, with rising interest rates, more time on market. It's talking about, my core values, right? Education, communication, responsiveness. What does integrity mean to me? It talks about my dogs. It talks about my lake dog, who a lot of people actually know about Isla and the life that, I gave her, right? You want to differentiate yourself in those regards, but having an actual budget behind your marketing, actually putting those things in front of people is the most critical thing that you can do. You can be the best real estate agent in the world, but if nobody knows about you, it's not going to get you anywhere, right? So yeah, I will promote myself on those things. I'm also weird in other regards. I don't ask for referrals. I tell people that I wish I had a dozen more just like you. And I'm still probably the most referred real estate agent in my market. I don't ask for referrals, right? I just let them know that I am referable, and people do. When I'm talking to clients, I'm like, well, this person was referred to me. I let them know that that's happening, right? But when it comes to your budget expenses, you have to make sure that you're working the system. You have to make sure that you're monitoring those expenses, and you actually have to make sure you actually have one, right? You can't just go out here and do this willy-nilly. So many agents get into this business thinking that the phone's just going to start ringing as soon as they get into it. And a lot of people, I feel like when they talk about budgeting, it's kind of a boring, unsexy thing because they're talking about cutting expenses, right? Again, loss leaders, right? You have to be comfortable spending money to get recognized, right? You're not going to make money off of every postcard you send out. You're not going to make money off of every video ad that you send ads out there. And you're not going to make money off of every coaster I drop off, right? So if you're tracking your ROI just on those things, it's all of the things, right? If I know that over the course of the year, I'm going to make $400,000 a year, I'm okay spending $140,000 a year, right? Even if I know some of those things are not making me money. Now, some things, if it's like lead generation, that's an ROI tracker. If you're spending $1,000 a month on homes.com and you're getting one deal every 5 months from that, that is not a good use of your time. Even if you're spending $1,000 a month and you're getting one sale every 3 months, there are better opportunities for you. Opportunity costs matter. You can spend money in other areas and get better clients, better leads, better paychecks. Right. So you have to monitor those things. But things like branding and marketing, it's not necessarily an ROI in that regards, right? The total expenses, total income, that's the ratio you actually want to be looking at, right? And I just think a lot of businesses, they get in, or a lot of agents, they'll spend money on things and they're like, okay, I paid the thing. Now I should have money coming in. You actually have to work those systems. That's what having that morning routine is about. That's about why you should gamify your real estate business. You also have to make sure you enjoy your business. That's why you want to build that lifestyle by design, right? All of these things that I'm talking about are about building a business that you actually enjoy being a part of, and having expenses. That's the fuel for your business, right? People talk about cost, like you are putting money in, it's fuel. You're putting wood on the fire, right? You're trying to build momentum. You're getting things going that way. That's the goal with expenses. And I think a lot of people are honestly underutilizing what they're paying for. Go through what your expenses are and look at those things and be like, what am I not doing here that I should be? How can I make it so that if someone else is doing what I'm doing here, how can I make mine different? How can I make mine stand out? Am I just going to go out there and copy every single thing that Wise Pelican puts out there for postcards? No, right? Am I going to hire, what is it? There's a few different platforms you can pay like $100 a month and they'll give you social media ads that you can run out there. The Facebook algorithm does not like that stuff. They want something that is going to attract people. That's about making sure that your stuff is novel, it's different, it's unique, right? So when I've been running my budget, I know if I make 30 grand in a month, that means I have a $9,000 budget. I know I got 2,000 for sync. I know I got 2,000 for Facebook ads. I know I got $1,500 for Wise Pelican. I also have about $1,000 in other little things like Sotellus, Carrot accounts, other little miscellaneous programs that I'm paying for, right? And I know that whatever I have left over, I got $1,500, $2,000 left over. I know I can put that into something else. Right? I can take that money and put it into something else. I typically will manage my budget every quarter. And there are some months where I will lose a little. Well, I don't typically lose money anymore, but there will be months where I have less profit. But I know that if I continuously do what it is I need to do, then I'm going to see that profit down the road, right? I'm at this point in my career now where I have an active 7 listings on the market. I got 2 more going up next week. That's a lot of listings for me. But I still know that right now, my main target is actually going to be buyers because the market is slowed down right now. Buyers, they're patient, right? They're like, when I find the house, I'm ready. Sellers want their house sold the moment put a for sale sign in the yard, right? And you have to explain how these things are affecting them, right? But you have to have room in your budget to experiment and play with things, right? You have to be like, I'm going to put money over here into coaching. I'm going to put money over here into lead generation. And I'm going to make sure that I actually do that work. I'm going to set a plan so that I can actually do those things regularly. Your expense budget should be about growth. And I know so many agents who are like, well, I don't want to spend money over here. I'm not afraid to spend money because I know when I spend money, I typically will get more money back. Right? It's not about cost, it's about fueling your business overall, right? Um, you can still be lean and grow, right? Like there was a point, like I said, where I was spending $3,600 a month, which for most agents are like that's still outrageous amounts. For me, it was like I just cut my expenses by 70% when I was doing that, right? Like I'm like I'm saving so much money right now. And I decided to grow. I decided to go into other avenues, right? Do things like that. So I don't. It was a pretty small group here today, so I will open it up to questions real quick because I'm a little over time. Does anyone have questions? This is my last training of the 4-week training. So if you have a question, now's the time to do it.
Um, it's very good training. I'm hearing about email marketing. Which one you use?
Hmm?
For email marketing, which company you use?
Oh, so Commissions Inc. actually has email campaigns within those things. Yep.
What is that?
Commissions Inc. Sync. CF.
Sync. Okay.
Yeah, I've been with them for forever. I'm a big believer in Commissions Inc. I love that program. They generate leads for you, and they have like a CRM and a dialer through it, so you can call them directly. I don't work that system like I was telling you should as much as I did in the past because nowadays 85% of my clients reach out to me directly. They find me from my Google reviews. They find me from other clients. They see my stuff out there. They run into me. That's typically where I get it. I know I did do street text for a while. I see you put a comment in there. I didn't find it to be as helpful. I'm not a big believer in actual Facebook leads. I'm a big believer in Facebook advertising, right? Branding. I think there's difference between branding and marketing.
Yeah. So I'm not doing. I'm just thinking that the fellow they're telling opening rate is good in them. Oh, yeah.
Never use fellow, so I don't know. But again, if it's a system that you buy into, you need to make sure that you're actually utilizing it.
Correct. Maybe I will try commission sync. Right? I will try.
It's a system you have to work, right?
Okay.
It's expensive. It's not cheap.
How much?
Enough for it is about yeah, you got it right, Tina. Sync, CINC. That's the program. It's expensive. It requires an upfront cost, right? Like
Oh, okay.
it's not cheap, and it's one of those things that you actually gotta work the system if you're gonna do it. But it's a hamster wheel.
Oh, nice.
Hamster, right?
Mm.
I'm an attraction based marketer now. That's what I do. But I don't want to shut it off because I mean, in the beginning, 80% of my business, and that goose stopped spitting out gold.
Okay. Okay.
Right? But I think a lot of people they're afraid to spend money. And I think that's just a bad strategy. It is the fuel for your business. It's the reason why I'm able to go out on the vacations I do and only have to work 15 to 20 hours a week is because I know that these things are happening in the background and I'm just getting clients while I sleep.
Nice.
Can't forget about you.
That's nice. Yeah, I'm not spending much. I'm like all the commissions I save. That's my drawback.
I would make it a priority to like, hey, this is the amount of money I make. I'm going to take 30% of it and I'm going to figure out a way to put that into my expenses and try to build a business off of that.
Yeah, I get
it. Like, just learn to live off of, remember, you still got taxes, you still got other things that you can pay your own personal living expenses. Yeah. I believe that, you can't open up a coffee shop if you're not going to pay for office space, for staff.
There you go. Yeah.
Beans or the machines. You can't do that. But you also can't just pay for those things and then think it's done for you if your employees aren't showing up. Right? Or the beans are got some sort of fungus on them. You got to make sure that those things are actually working. And you have to be able to pivot and switch.
Yeah. That's correct. Yeah, amazing. Very good information.
Anything else here before I check out here? Yeah. So I am I'm done for my 4 weeks here. Hopefully we'll see me icon again this next year, and then I'll be back for 4 more trainings. So other than that, if you need anything else, I'm pretty easy to connect with. You'll find me on socials. I do pick up the phone.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Yes, have a great rest of the summer and rest of the last 5 months of the year.
Sure. Thank you.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.